Hello, this is Dread from Epic Builds, and in today's video topic we'll go over ReimerhArt's Hazelroot Bleed Werebear. Finally, the meme can end. No more can we meme on Bleed Werebear. The curse has finally been lifted. So I got bored waiting for 3.17, so I thought I'd make 1 to 2 more builds before the end of this week. If you end up enjoying the content, I'd suggest liking the video and subscribing to the channel, as that's the best way to support my efforts here. So you heard that right, ReimerhArt's build. So the last Epoch devs are cool in the way where they actually play their game, and Reimer is no exception. Recently I was attempting to get Bleed Werebear up and functional and ultimately failed. The version I was trying was way too vanilla, too simple. Thankfully, Reimer is around everywhere, including all of the Twitch chats when people are streaming last Epoch, and he was talking about Bleed Werebear himself and said he was having decent success with it. And of course, I had to ask why. Thankfully, he's big-brained enough to realize that Hazelroot says physical skills and not physical spells, like I thought. This means that we have an 18% chance to proc a Thorn Shield every time we use our swipe, Maul or Warcry. We can usually get up to like 8 to 10 on a single target and even more while clearing. Since we can specialize into Spriggan form to make these Thorn Shields even stronger, with extra armor and damage, it means they end up being a decent amount of our single target DPS. They also make our clear much better, as their AoE is good enough to clear trash, making the build feel a lot better to play in Endgame. Other improvements we've made is the addition of a weapon swap. So for single target, our bleed duration is amazing, as we get close to 9-second bleeds, but the problem is all that damage doesn't feel good when clearing, because trash dies way before our bleeds end. That's why we use a taste of blood for our clear. It doubles bleed speed on the target, meaning that it has the duration and doubles its damage, which is a net equal in terms of DPS, but it makes our damage feel much better on trash, as it closes the gap between killing them and when the bleed ends. This interaction is insanely strong, as we only need to swipe a few times per pack to kill it entirely, thanks to all of our Thorn Shield procs and Maul. All of this means that our quality of life raises through the roof, as we don't need to spend forever swiping things, which was one of the main problems of the last build. Our Thorn Shield stacking means we get very close to armor cap, which is 85%. In maps, we get up to 75%ish armor, which is enormous, but we utilize a Throne of Ambition for bosses, as we can get a free 400% increased armor from it. This means that we can face Tank Oribus and some of the monolith bosses very easily, and reach up to 82% armor, which is close to the soft armor scaling. Now normally, you must be thinking, Dread, going from 75% armor to 82%, that sounds terrible. It's only a 7% increase. That's where you're wrong. Because of how mathematics works, a 75% armor, we take 25% of all hits, and more if it's not physical. At 82% armor, we take 18% of all hits, which is close to 30% less damage taken overall in comparison. This is huge, as it lets us do what I was doing in the footage, just sit on top of Oribus, which helps a lot in terms of single target DPS because our ramp up is slow. Being this tanky means we can keep up almost 100% uptime on our bleed stacks, so even though it takes a full minute to kill Oribus, we are dealing peak DPS to him the whole time. With all that being said, let's get into the video, shall we? Alright, here we are in game with the build. So for the skill rotation, normally we're just going to Werebear, Warcry, and of course Maul. That's really it. And while we move through monoliths, we just, of course, do the combination of these three attacks just to get all of our DPS out. As you can tell, we're getting some Thorn Shields here, waiting for a little bit more Thorn Shields. It's actually a low amount of Thorn Shields, ironically. And we get up to like 120, 130k on the dummy, which is like respectable for a Werebear build, considering most Werebear builds are ZDPS. Now for clearing, we're going to be utilizing a Taste of Blood. I would heavily suggest getting one with attack speed before playing this build, because that helps a lot. And of course we'll swap over to a Dragon Bone Axe for single target. But yeah, the clear on this feels amazing, although the single target is terrible, which is fine because we don't need it for single target, we just want it for clear, right? But yeah, that's pretty much it for the skill rotation and like what you do in monoliths. You just swap between these whenever you want to clear monoliths or whenever you want to kill a boss. Now, for the skills themselves, for Werebear form, I have a +3 Werebear, I have +2 on my helm, and then I have +1 from Thornslinger. You actually don't need this +3, it just helps a lot because it just gives us extra endurance percentage, which makes it so I can, ignore endurance and other parts of gear, but you don't technically need this. And of course, 3 points into Frenzied Strike for rage gained on hit with swipe. This is really strong when we're doing monoliths and helps us sustain our rage, as we're not doing the Gardens of Range combo because we actually need our points inside Spriggan form for all of our damage. So we try to go with a combination of Frenzied Strikes and Invigoration to sustain our rage while clearing, which is plenty. Then 1 point travel into Territorial, 2 points into Fury of the Maul. We want as much cooldown on our Fury Leap as possible, or a Maul, so that we can keep up the buff, which is where is it? There's a buff with this 30% attack speed here. We want that 30% attack speed, so getting it under 3 seconds is really good for us. Then 5 points to Bloodthirst. This is Global Bleed. This is doubled for Maul, so our Maul actually has more bleed chance in this. This is really good for us, obviously, because Global Bleed chance will apply to everything, which I can show you here. So we're at like 320% without Werebear form here. Of course, as I swap into Werebear form, 470, which is really good, because that will apply to everything we do, including our melee hits and our Thorn Shields. Then 1 point into Skull Crusher because we want to make our Fury Leap tree benefiting Maul. Then 5 points into Rip and Tear. This makes our Maul actually do a competitive amount of damage versus our Swipe and is part of our single target DPS, because not only are we using Swipe, we're also using Maul and our Thorn Shield. So I can show you guys here if we hit the target a little bit and get my aspect of the board and everything set up here. I can show you. So for our swipe, 77k, 50k on Maul, of course, and then on our Thorn Shields, I believe it'll show us like 11k. It's a little bit more than that. Just give me a second. I gotta like get everything up, and then it's like 50k with our Thorn Shields. Now, obviously, that's like just physical damage. That's not like the bleed damage. It's like combined. So we actually end up doing a decent amount of melee flat, especially when we have a Dragon Bone Axe out. So like, obviously, not all of our damage is technically bleed, but most of our single target is bleed. So yeah, the damage is pretty good because of that. And that's pretty much it for Werebear form here. Then for Spriggan form, we take 1 point travel into Ironbark, 3 points into Deep Roots. We want our Thorn Shields to last as long as possible. We don't want we want as many on us as possible so that we get as much armor. This does make clearing a little bit weirder because, like I said, our Thorn Shields last a lot longer on us, but it doesn't really matter. Then 5 points into Atera's Bulwark for a bunch of armor. So this is per shield. So for instance, Thorn Shield itself gives us 30 armor, right, as a base. Then this goes up to 130 thanks to Terra's Bulwark. And of course, we get increased armor per shield. This is per shield, and this is why we gain so much armor, right? Because as we gain shields here, I'll show you, we go up in armor. As we gain shields here, there you go, we go up in armor significantly. Like, we make significant jumps, right? Which is really cool. Then 3 points into Bulb Growth. This makes it so that whenever Thorn Shield expires, it recasts, so we get 30% more Thorn Shields technically because of this node, which is nice. Then we do have +1, so I end up putting 1 point into Stinging Bramble, but you don't actually need this +1. This is just a little bit of extra damage. Then 3 points into Rose Metal for the Thorn Burst damage is 24% more, and of course 60% more from Spike Burst here. But yeah, that's pretty much it for that. For Fury Leap itself, we take 3 points into Panther Strike. This is going to apply to our Maul, like I said. Then 4 points into Crater because we want as much AoE as possible. Then of course, where is it? 1 point into Lagan's Wrath. This is just an extra hit. We want as many hits as possible, and this is one of those extra hits. Then 5 points into Savage Impact, which is a bunch of more damage for our Maul because it's multiplicative with the Maul from here as well, which is nice. Then 5 points into Warrior's Entrance. This just gives us 100% increased damage all the time because we're always mauling, of course. Same thing with this, 3 points into Rage, more attack speed. We want as much attack speed as humanly possible because the faster we attack, the more Thorn Shields we get, and the more Thorn Shields we get, the more armor we get, and the more Thorn Shields we get, the more procs we get from the hits, which will apply more bleeds, which will deal more damage. So attack speed is technically exponential with this build, kind of like how Surf and Strike is. So we're pretty much turning our swipe into a baby Surf and Strike, if that makes sense, if you're aware of how Surf and Strike works. And that's pretty much it for Fury Leap. Then for Warcry here, our Warcry is completely different than a lot of different builds. We're going to explain it. 2 points, travel into Staggering Roar, 1 point to apprehend. So we're a melee build. We want things to be near us. So what happens is we apply our roar, and then this will pull enemies towards the totem, right? Which means that we can like pull enemies closer and, you know, clean them up. Because our Thorn Shield is big, but it's not humongous, which I'll show you. Like our Thorn Shield's big, but it's not that big. It's big, but not that big. So we definitely want to group things together so we can hit them with our swipe and our maul. So that's why we're mainly doing that. The pull mainly. Then 1 point travel into Kinetic Scream, 2 points travel into Shredding Howl, 1 point into Shallow Breath for the cooldown, then 1 point into Totemic Heart. I'll explain why we have this in a second. Then 1 point into Juggernaut for the invulnerable after using Warcry, which is nice, helps us dodge some boss effects. 1 point into Berserker, 2 points travel into Brutality, then 3 points of Fury Strikes. This makes it so our Berserker stacks give us 60% attack speed. This gets us all the way up to like 220% attack speed, which is insane. And that's without Wing Guards, by the way, because I was running Wing Guards before this, but then I realized Assault the Wound was obviously the best choice, so we ended up swapping into Assault the Wound setup. Then we take 1 point travel into Hastily Advance, 4 points travel, 4 points into Energized Charge for mana efficiency and the duration for the haste, and of course 1 point into Raging Frenzy. So why are we doing this? Because we're doing it with the totem. What does that mean? I'll show you here. So as you can tell, we get so if Warcry, i.e. our totem, hits an enemy, we gain Henzi and Phrase. Haste. Now, the duration themselves is not enough to keep it 100% uptime. Like this here, where is it? This here is not 100% uptime, which is sucks for us because we want Frenzy, right? Because we're dumping Maelstrom for a bunch of stuff. So we want to have this Frenzy up all the time. But thanks to the being able to turn it into a totem here, as you can tell, we keep it up almost long enough. Almost. Very close to 100% uptime, which is all that matters. So it's just an extra 20% attack speed, which is nice. So we're getting 80% total from Warcry, just from Warcry. And of course we get the haste and all that. And that's pretty cool. So that's why we're using Warcry. And for swipe here, it's a utility setup, obviously. 2 points travel to Wave the Hunt, 4 points into Wingarian Reach so that we have a big AoE because we want as much AoE as possible so we can make clear better. 2 points travel into Blood Beast. Sadly, we don't have enough points to put all the points into this, but otherwise it would be nice. 3 out of 4 points for Rending. We get to cap when we're capped on attack speed. So this is plenty. 3 points is plenty. Then 2 points travel into Aspect of the Panther for a bunch of increased damage, just 40% increased damage. It's nice because we're globally doing bleed. Then 1 point into Feline Hunter. Like I said, more attack speed, the better. 3 points travel to Ambush, then 4 points into Apex Predator. The reason why we like this because it's global bleed effectiveness, which will get turned into 60% bleed effectiveness here. So it's like 100% crit multi, which will get turned into 60% bleed effectiveness, which I'll show you here. Get a bunch of damage from it. That's from Aspect of the Board too, actually too. 1 second, let me show you a better. Shut up. There you go. 718, then we'll be at 1,000 with Aspect of the Board. But yeah, that's why we're grabbing this node, is because it's being converted into bleed effectiveness thanks to Assault the Wounds. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the gearing. Let's talk about the skill passive tree. This is very complicated as well, so we'll go over it in depth. 6 points into Gift of the Wilderness for HP. 2 points travel into Natural Attunement. I'm using it to cap my resistances right now, or I was at 1 point. 1 point into Harmony of Blades so it can dual wield. Hazelroot is a scepter. It is not a axe or a sword, so we need to run this on our main hand, and of course run an axe on our offhand for more damage. So that's why we're running this. 5 points into Hunter's Restoration for increased HP. 1 point travel to Primal Medicine, 5 points into Ancient Call for more flat HP, then 5 points for Berserker, which is pretty much Endurance Plus, just makes our Endurance even stronger, as you can tell in the Orbis clip. 7 out of 8 points at Earthsign Strength. I do not have my last point from Majasa because I'm lazy and I don't want to go do it. So I don't think it's a passive point from Majasa anymore. I think there's a passive point that I'm missing from the last part of the campaign. So that's where this is missing. Then I would obviously have 8 if I had that. 4 points into Boarheart for Aspect of the Boar. 4 points travel into Tusk Warrior. Global bleed chance is nice, but it doesn't really give you that much. so it's not really worth putting 8 points into this. Then 7 out of 8 points into Deep Wounds for increased bleed effectiveness granted. This is very strong, as this is on top of all the other bleed effect we get. This is the main reason why the build even functions in the first place, is because of this node. 5 points of Porcine Constitution for even more DR, then 2 points of Primal Strength. I found that this is enough because we're swiping enough to maintain it in most situations. If you die, it's usually because this is not up, so maybe having a 3rd point in this would be nice, but as you can tell, I'm very point starved as it is. Then 7 points into Chitinous Plating for extra endurance percentage. I don't have that much endurance percentage on gear, hence why I'm grabbing endurance inside Werebear, and of course on here, because my blessing here is fire res instead, so that's why we're grabbing so much endurance here. 7 points into Spirit Warden because we want as much flat HP as possible. 7 points into Claws of the Forest for increased physical damage. 7 per point. It's pretty good because that's one of the things we lack with this build is increased damage, so we definitely want as much as possible. 5 points into Thicket of Thorns. This makes it so that whenever we're hit, we actually cast a Thorn Shield as well, so we actually passively gain armor as we go through a monolith, which is really nice because that makes up for the fact that our aspect of the our throne of ambition isn't working in monoliths because it's not a boss, right? They're just trash, so you don't get throne stacks, so you don't actually get up to like armor cap, but you get up decently thanks to the armor when hit, thanks to this node. Then 10 points of Nightshade Fangs because that's melee bleed chance. 2 out of 3 of our attacks are melee attacks, the swipe and the maul, so having as much bleed chance as possible is nice for those two. Then 5 points into Wind of the Leads because, like I said, attack speed is best for this build. 3 points travel to Focus Wrath, although increased damage is nice. The reduced Rage Decay is nice because we're not running the Gardens of Rage combo. Then, of course, 1 point to Rancor makes it so there's no Rage Decay out of combat. It's just quality of life. Then 8 points into Hide Skin. That's as many as I could invest in without it screwing me over. I found 8 points to be enough. That's actually one of the reasons why I like Bleed Werebear so far, is the fact that you can invest into Hide Skin without, fucking over your build, which is nice. Then 5 points in Impervious because when we're on a boss, we get all 5 stacks. So this is not for trash, because what happens is whenever we get hit, we lose a stack. So we have 5 stacks, and if we get hit by like 5 mobs, we lose all our Impervious stacks, which obviously is bad, right? But on a boss like Oribus, when we're getting hit like once every blue moon, we actually get like 20% extra DR thanks to this, which is nice, right? And that's pretty much it for the passive tree. Like I said, it's really hard to justify taking points out of anywhere because you want Hide Skin, you want Impervious, and you want this Deep Wounds inside Beastmaster. So it's really hard to use your passives on this build. So this is definitely one of those builds where you got to squeeze out as much passive points as possible. And that's pretty much it for the passives. Now for the gearing here. So first thing off, Thorn of Ambition obviously as an idol. This is very strong, gives us 400% increased armor. I would suggest getting this as quick as possible for this build. This is not a cheap build, by the way, if you haven't noticed yet. So this is your best in slot idol. You'd want 3 of these extra and Throne of Ambition. I'm just running different idols because I'm not capped on resistances and stuff without them, and crit avoid and all that. But this is your best in slot idol because this aspect of the Boar effect, it is applying to our, where is it? Not only does it apply to the DR we get from aspect of the Boar, so 10% aspect of the Boar effect brings us from 30% to I think 33% DR, which is obviously huge. And of course, it gives us 10% more bleed effect. So for instance, this would be 117% bleed effect, which is really strong, of course. So having 3 of these would be nice because we'd get a bunch of extra bleed effect and DR. And of course, bleed duration is your best prefix because, like I said, since we're using Taste of Blood, we don't really care for clear. And of course, for single target, bleed duration is your best in slot. So I would suggest having 3 of these. You can obviously run crit avoid HP idols. You can run, resistance idols. But yeah, that's what I would suggest is 3 adorned hero idols and then 1 Throne of Ambition. That would be my go-to. And that's pretty much it for the idols. And for the helmet, I have good gear. As you can tell, This is T1, T2 crit multi while transformed. We want the crit multi because it's being converted into bleed effect. And of course, bleed duration is the sealed affix because it's really good at tier 1 or tier 2. Then +2 to werebear form for the extra points. You don't technically need this. The main reason I'm actually running this is for the increased damage while transformed, which we lack, of course. Of course, increased health and probably endurance. This could be on a better base as well. Then we have a bleeding heart for the leech, the attack speed on the implicit, and of course the damage. Having LP bleeding heart is really nice. Resistances, damage, the usual. Hazelroot. Hazelroot is a scepter, so you can get attack speed on it. That is your priority. Getting attack speed, and fizz damage over time, because you can't get bleed chance on a Hazelroot on the suffix, because Hazelroot is a scepter, and scepters don't get bleed chance on their suffix. So you don't give a crap about your suffixes. You only care about both of your prefixes. You want attack speed and damage over time, or fizz damage, either way, right? And of course, for the axe, I have a sealed axe here. Attack speed, crit multi, bleed on hit. Then you can run whatever else. I just have health on hit and chill on hit. This was for my bleed warpath build, but this works just as well here. You don't need a sealed one. Obviously, you just care about the bleed, the attack speed, and the crit multi. You don't care about anything else. Then for the chest, this is wrong. That damage over time should be crit multi while transformed, but it's too late to change it now. Vitality, HP, bleed duration sealed, because like I said, T1 duration, or what is this? T1 duration is insanely strong just by being T1, so you can seal it very easily, and that's why I put the damage over time there. This was before I swapped over to Salt the Wounds, so obviously you'd really, really, really want to go for of course, crit multi while transformed. Although damage over time while transformed is good too, because, the more increased damage, the better, right? So, like, either way, both of them are pretty good. The rings, damage, HP, resistance, endurance, crit avoid. I like ivory rings because you don't have that much implicit like necrotic res as a primalist, especially since we're not running the necrotic resistance base for the relic, because we're running a Valdir's. So this is why I really like ivory rings for primalists. Then of course damage, strength. You probably want damage over time instead. Resistance, crit avoid. I have a lot of resistance blessings specifically. I have void res, I have bleed on hit from Reign of Dragons, and I have cold res, and I have fire res. So this is, like I said, a very expensive build. So it's like, that's why my rings look like this. Otherwise, I'd be running resistances here. For a Thorn Slinger, you just want whatever, as much HP as you can possibly slam on a Thorn Slinger, fizz damage, the usual, but the global bleed is really nice. The plus to fizz skills is nice because it helps you out in your trees. But yeah, the movement speed's nice too. Then for the gloves, you want Salt the Wounds. If you're to get LP on these, attack speed, fizz damage over time, HP, crit avoidance, the usual smattering. I actually dropped this on stream, which is really cool. Absolutely perfect for a bleed build, because the crit avoid, the bleed effectiveness is rolled perfectly, and the fizz res is rolled perfectly. The damage over time is almost rolled perfectly, and the crit multi is a little meh, but it's like fine, it's like acceptable. If this was being used for poison, it'd be trash, by the way, so don't use it for poison. But yeah, well, if you have like really bad rolls for poison, I wish I had a 25% on the poison. This would be amazing, because that having that fizz res helps a lot, because it helps me cap my fizz res. Then boots, you want as much HP as you possibly can get. Just slap as much HP as possible on your boots. You could go for a Yulia's Path with LP and some HP on them for extra resistances. You could go for, let me see here, I have a few of these. You could go for an Atera's Path, this with some HP on it. That could give you a lot of HP. So that would be really good. There's a lot of ways you could use an Atera's Path because of that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for boots. But yeah, I would suggest an Atera's Path with like HP on them. Then of course, Valdir's Chalice. I have not seen a single Valdir's Chalice with LP yet. Some other people have, so they do exist. They're just very rare apparently. But yeah, the bleed duration is really nice, 50% bleed duration. This is why we feel so tanky in monoliths, is because the 20 health gained on kill per stack of bleed on the target. Since we have really long bleed duration, most of the time whenever enemies die, they have like 20 plus bleeds on them, which is a lot of healing from Valdir's Chalice. And thanks to the fact that we're so tanky, thanks to like all the other, werebear stuff, It means that even when we get taken down to a low amount of HP, Valor's Chalice has our back and gets us back up. And this combined with the Fizz damage leech, and of course the Bleeding Heart leech as well, we get up to like 10% of our damage leached over time, which means we can face tank most things, which is really cool. And that's pretty much it for gearing. Like I said, I'd suggest a Taste of Blood with attack speed on it for clearing. Of course, you want bleed chance, percentage, and attack speed, crit multi, the usual smattering. Now, a undisputed with attack speed, well, undisputed with these mods, with attack speed, crit multi, bleed chance, that would be your best in slot technically. It's just I don't have any undisputeds with LP, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, this will do you well until you get undisputed with attack speed. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the build today, guys. Thanks, Reimer, for letting me showcase this build. Thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful rest of the day wherever you're at, and bye.